are emotions anyway? Depending on who you ask, you might get slightly different answers. One thing we know is feelings are a dominant force for us learning, and they're powerful and they're meaningful. And that's something that we can all agree on. And yet there is some debate and some discrepancies on some more of the details beyond that. So according to Jack Mayer, who we've talked about before, he's a well-known researcher in the field. He says different researchers define emotions differently. More biologically focused research look at the biological states and the electrochemical reactions and responses, while psychologists might define emotions with more of the conscious experiment experience. But most are somewhere in between, and they view emotions as a coordinated response system. So there is biological, but also cognitive states, and that's all occurring in a simultaneous way along with a physical response. So, you've got both the physical and the biological aspect occurring at the same time. And this is one of the most simplistic views of a way to state what an emotion is, but I think it's one of the most powerful. So, emotions bridge thought, feeling, and action. I'll say that again. Emotions bridge thoughts, feelings, and actions, and they operate on every level of a person and affect many aspects of a person. So, just to look at some others, emotions are a warning system. They tell us how life is going, they tell us how a certain event is going. Emotions, Candace, she is more of a biological side of emotions, and, says that you can actually see emotions on a material level. She's seen them in a molecular level as an actual material. And Annabelle Jensen, says that we are we think, then we feel, then we act. So this idea again that emotions bridge everything together, and that emotions are our response to the world around us and are created by combinations of thoughts, feelings, and actions, according to Karen McCowan. So, as again, the basic idea here is emotions are occurring at a physical, emotional, and in a psychological state all at the same time. They help us bridge our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, the details beyond that, there is some debate depending on which field of study the person happens to be in. So, some seven interesting facts here to know about emotions. First is emotions are signals, and emotions actually they release chemicals into our body depending on what type of emotion that we're feeling. And it flows throughout our body all the time. And they are also produced in our bodies and go to our brain. So if you could do some research on this and find that actually you have some emotional reactions, chemicals that like come from your gut or come from your heart. That's pretty fascinating to read too. So there are 8 basic emotions. If any of you have seen the movie Inside Out, you kind of already know that. So joy, sadness, fear, disgust, surprise, anticipation, anger, and trust. Those are the 8 basic emotions, and from there's lots of different emotion wheels, lots of different scales, intensity scales. We're going to look at the Plutchik model, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, this idea that emotions, if left unchecked, or if left to combine with other emotions, can create kind of a domino effect, but that emotions are, as number 3 says, they're neutral. There's not good and bad emotions. All emotions are data, and they're all just simply delivering us some sort of message about what's going on around us in our life right now. Number 4 there, goes back to the primitive look of emotions, that it's emotions are just to bring our attention to whatever's going on around us to help us know how to act. So if you think about, um, way back when, before we had all the luxuries that we have today, or even if we take an example of today, I'm going to cross the street. I don't see a car. all of a sudden this car is coming at me, well, my emotions are going to tell me fight, flight, or flee. And that's the most basic level of what emotions are, is to tell me how I need to respond. Um, Emotions are contagious. They're very contagious, in fact, like a virus, and we can catch them from other people. You might be in a situation where people are very upbeat and happy, and you may have walked in not feeling that way, but more likely than not you're going to leave feeling that way. And it could be vice versa. Emotions are contagious. We're social creatures, and we definitely pick up that emotional state from each other. And that could be just from simply watching, it could be from talking and interacting, it could be body language, behavior patterns. Those are all things that we notice and we can mirror. Number 6, emotions are different than feelings and moods. We're going to actually explore that a little bit later, but emotions, feelings, and moods are very different. Emotions are absorbed in the body in about 6 seconds, which actually is how the company 6 Seconds got their name. But from each burst of emotional chemicals, from the time it's produced in the brain to the time it's completely broken down and absorbed, is about 6 seconds. And if we are feeling something longer than 6 seconds, we're at some level choosing to continue to refuel those feelings. And we're going to talk a little bit about how just the simple act of naming that feeling can stop that cycle.